Hello everybody, welcome to our GCP-Mindset channel. Today's topic is efficiently prepared for remote audits. So, today's topic, as already mentioned, is how we can prepare ourselves for remote audit in an efficient way. Besides the preparation and the conduct of an audit, we will speak today also about the impact of communication in the context of an audit. So what comes to your mind when you think about audits? In the most cases, people are feeling with respect to audits that they are like a burden, that audits are stressful, they are bearing conflicts, as well as partly feeling it like criticism. So in a nutshell, people really like being audited, and for many people audits are the necessary evil, but basically according to ICH, an audit is a systematic and independent examination, and we will find similar information in the ISO 14155, which is an ISO standard for medical devices. There is also mentioned that an audit is a systematic examination conducted by independent persons. So the purpose of each audit is to determine the compliance with the current good clinical practice, national regulations, applicable standard operation procedures, and the study contract within a particular system. Audits are an instrument of quality assurance for the sponsor, which can be conducted by independent auditors, the sponsor, or a CRO. Basically, we can distinguish between on-site audits, which are activities which are performed at the location of the auditee. On the other hand, we have remote audits, which are performed at any place than the location of the auditee, regardless of the distance. And we have partly remote audits as well as remote follow-ups. Both methods are a combination, let's say, of on-site as well as remote audits. And the use of these methods should be suitable balanced based, among others, considerations of associated risks and opportunities. So, and the feasibility of remote audit activities can depend on several factors, like example, the level of risk achieving the audit objectives, the level of convenience between auditors and auditors' personal and regulatory requirements. So, and following this idea of today's topic, speaking about remote audits, we have to take into consideration when a remote audit should be performed. In addition to possible safety concerns or travel restrictions, it plays also a role, like, for example, which we had in the last years, the quarantine has to be taken into consideration after a location. So it has to be clearly pointed out, okay, is the travel to the location not reasonable? On the other hand, we can face unavoidable changes in the scheduling, which means that we have, for example, last-minute changes in the planning. This could be for personal reasons or as well as company-related reasons, which can happen on a short term. Next to it, where we have also to consider remote audits is that the number of sites which should be assessed is difficult within one time frame. So which means that companies are having outsourced any services, and the simultaneous visit is not possible in this case. So therefore, In addition to a fully remote audit, it could be then also a partly remote audit performed here as an add-on to, for example, an on-site visit, if it's useful. And for sure, a remote audit can be performed if the auditee has a systematic implementation of a management system where it's quite easy to access the data which we need for this remote audit. Last but not least, I want to point out that remote audits could be considered when activities planned for the on-site audit could not be completed in time. So, and we have to extend it in a way. So the best resolution would be here then to do it in a short frame afterwards remotely. Remote audits may not considered in case the auditee has a history of non-compliance at the location being assessed, meaning deviation in the operational processes have been observed repeatedly in the past, or processes are not traceable anymore. Or the initial qualification of a vendor, contract partner, or a significant change of service portfolio and the cooperation of these services should be reviewed. In this case, I would recommend to go really on-site instead of having a remote audit. A remote audit should also not be considered when no on-site assessment has taken place for an extended period of time. In this case, an example would be the requalification of a vendor or contract partner. However, there are significant differences regarding to the preparation of an on-site monitoring in comparison to such a remote monitoring. First of all, it must be ensured that both the parties have the required hardware, such as laptops or webcams available. This also includes telephones and any Wi-Fi hubs. So this has to be established on both sides, which we have to use here as a requirement. Next to this, it has to be also made sure that the installation of the corresponding conferences tools are established. And in addition, also, we need the technical know-how to use all these tools. So we need the competence to combine the audit interview as well as the audit technique. And this is a quite special challenge in the combination of these interviews as well as the processes and also the review of the documents. So therefore, it's very important that the provision of the documents has to be clarified upfront to really make sure that we have the needed information. Okay, next to it, it has to be created a audit retune to really have the ability to identify risks and avoid any conflicts. Last but not least, for sure, we have to take into consideration the data protection requirements for such an audit. The execution of a remote audit does not really significantly differ from the procedure of an on-site audit. Basically, such an audit is characterized by C phrases: before the audit, covering by the audit preparation, during the audit, so the audit conduct, and the third phase is the audit report in combination with the audit follow-up. So what we have to take into consideration for the preparation of the audit. So we can distinguish here between a planning phase, document request and review, as well as the preparation of an audit plan, as well as the agenda. The planning, or during the planning, the auditor contacts the auditee to explain the purpose of the audit and arrange suitable date for an audit. And once they have exchanged all this information, the author sends a letter, email to the auditee to confirming the type of the audit, the scope, the date, time, and stating the requirements of the audit. During the document request, it has to be clarified the timeline for the documents, which has to be requested. And the auditor and the client should make sure that these documents are available for the objective and the scope of the audit. The timeline for the document review depends on the nature of the complexity and amount of documentation provided by the client. So this has here a deep impact really to understand the purpose of the audit, to make sure that the review of the documents are performed in a proper way. After the review, during the preparation of the audit plan as well as the agenda, the documents of the authority prepares the plan and sends it to the client for review, and again, final approval, so that there is clear from both sides what has to be expected from such a remote audit. In order to be well prepared for such an audit, I would like to recommend to you the development of an SOP covering this structured preparation of an audit. So such a document should include items such the establishment of an audit support team. So this team should consist of representatives in relation to quality assurance, if applicable, also the clinical trial team, someone from the legal department, from the IT, as well as from the administrative support. So it should be really clear who has which responsibilities in respect to such an audit. Then it has to be clarified who will be present within the opening meeting, within the individual audit topics, meaning the interviews, as well as during the closing meeting. And very important to make it really easy for the auditor is to identify a single point of contact for the auditor. Besides this, it should be also specified who is managing the documentation flow during the audit, who is present during the breaks, taking the minutes, is responsible for copies, or for the virtual tour through the facilities. Also, such topics like reservation of meeting rooms, guidance for communication should be established. And the last but very important topic is really to train your team to be aware of an audit. This includes also interview trainings. So perform mock training so that the team is used to participate in interviews and do not feel uncomfortable in such situations like an audit. For sure, an audit or remote audit is also associated with some risk. So during the preparation of a remote audit, you have to ensure the usage of agreed remote access devices, the software. You have to make sure that the availability of the quantity plans is given, which means what happened if, for example, the internet connection is a kind of broken or not stable, that there is a plan in place which is then dealing with the situation and clarify, for example, that you will follow up via telephone, as an example. Make sure that you use the floor plans, the diagrams of the remote locations of a reference, prevent background noise disruptions, and also asking for permission in advance to take any kind of recordings. It has also to be considered that you have to ensure confidentiality and privacy during these audit breaks. For example, by muting microphones, pausing the cameras. Now we spoke a lot about the preparation of audits and what has to be taken in consideration to be prepared, and everything is planned with respect to the conduct of the audit itself. So the audit itself is characterized with three areas. We have the opening meeting, the audit conduct itself, and the closing meeting. During the opening meeting, the participants briefly introduce themselves, and if possible, all the participants of the audit should be present. In this area as well, the reason as well as the orientation and the procedures should be explained again. And after the approval by all parties, the audit starts with a short presentation about the organization. The presentation is a tool which you can use to introduce the company, the project study department, other areas which could be audited. And it's about history, development, portfolio of services. So really takes this as an opportunity to give an overview of the organizational structure, the geographical presence, as well as other strong points like number of current projects, number of trial protocols, or number of CRFs you dealt with so far. The audit conduct itself is then characterized by a mixture of interviews with relevant staff members, kind of virtual facility tour, and where also the auditor is comparing the information obtained in the interviews with the documents he received during the preparation period, as well as review and cross-checks all these documents. The interview of these relevant staff helps the auditor to verify the knowledge of the responsible persons. It could also happen that the auditor split up groups and create subgroups, which is he's joining to really go into deep questions regarding the processes and procedure as well. During the closing meeting, the auditors usually summarize the main focus of an audit and discuss the preliminary audit observations with the auditee and the relevant personnel.
This was the first part of our webinar, Efficiently Prepared for Remote Audits. I'm looking forward to see you next week for the second part. Take care. Bye.